Today, we'll talk about the FAA's desperate decision to stop SpaceX and how Cosmo SkyMed is under investigation by the same body. Skymeds' reaction towards the FAA can be shocking to most. Stick around to see how SpaceX no longer cares about the FAA's launch permit, even though Elon Musk's plans for Mars cannot yet be guaranteed, or making a successful journey to Mars isn't yet feasible. Nothing appears to be holding him back from pursuing his dreams, particularly in light of the Federal Aviation Administration's efforts to solidify their role in planning, developing, and maintaining a safe and efficient national airport infrastructure. They don't appear to be giving SpaceX any room to breathe or prepare for the launch of the Starship. However, for the sake of human interest, we may wish to support the FAA's efforts to protect the United States ecosystem from combusted gas emitted from rocket engines, which may be harmful to human health, particularly our internal organs. On the other hand, we may believe that the entire scenario currently unfolding is being politicized. We can't recall the US president saying anything negative or positive about Elon's companies, nor has he mentioned or acknowledged the presence of Tesla or SpaceX in the United States. According to Donald Trump, he had just remained silent and he's possibly sleeping. That's right, you remember the Sleeping Joe? Sincerely speaking, it is extremely frustrating that the FAA has prevented SpaceX from conducting space launches to the Earth's orbit. Even when the FAA allowed several comment and hearings from the public, many SpaceX and non-SpaceX supporters expressed genuine concern for SpaceX frustration. As a result, FAA enact policies. You are aware that many people around the world have witnessed Elon's day and night struggle to get things working out with the Starship so that it can finally travel to Mars and return. The FAA, on the other hand, has denied SpaceX the ability to launch from any location. Despite widespread public support for SpaceX, the Federal Aviation Administration has maintained her wicked decision to prevent the company from launching the Starship. However, SpaceX has given up on the body and may be left with the only option, which is to sneak the Starship through the FAA's nose and launch it into orbit, and of course, they've already done that without the FAA's permit. If you were in SpaceX's shoes, would you sit back and watch FAA delay you? Of course not. Not when Elon Musk has already been working towards launching about 100 Starships into orbit during the forthcoming launch cycle. SpaceX has already taken the bull by the horn, and we don't have to blame them for that. Despite the fact that the FAA's responsibilities include air traffic control, certification of personnel and aircraft, the establishment of airport standards, and the protection of US assets during the launch or re-entry of commercial space vehicles into Earth's atmosphere, SpaceX and Elon Musk is actually tired of waiting on them to do the needful. So the company has launched a couple of their rockets into space this 2022, and let's in brief discuss about these launches. The Cosmo SkyMed second generation 2 Italian Earth observation satellite was successfully launched from Florida by SpaceX after a series of setbacks over the course of several days. The Falcon 9 rocket carrying the spacecraft lifted off from Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. An Italian radar mapping satellite was launched into orbit on January 31st by a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket following 4 days of delays caused by range and weather issues. It was 6:11 p.m. Eastern Time when the Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from the Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. A little over an hour after liftoff, the upper stage of the rocket successfully deployed its payload, and Cosmo SkyMed second generation CSG-2 satellite for the Italian space agency ASI and the Italian military. The first stage of the rocket returned to landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral 8 minutes after liftoff, bringing the mission to an end. In its original configuration, the booster intended to serve as a side booster for the triple-core Falcon Heavy rocket, and it flew on the second and third Falcon Heavy missions in 2019. This was the first launch in which a Falcon Heavy side booster was converted into a Falcon 9 booster, and it was also the first time that this happened throughout the history of rocket launches. The launch was originally scheduled for January 27th, but later cancelled due to bad weather, which also forced the cancellation of launch attempts the following 2 days. For a fourth attempt on January 30th, the weather cooperated, but a cruise ship had entered restricted waters off the Florida coast and was unable to move out of the way in time for the launch. The 2,200-kilogram satellite, built by Thales Alenia Space, is the second in a fleet of 4 satellites designed to replace the original Cosmo SkyMed satellites, which were launched between 2007 and 2010. The first 3 satellites, launched between 2007 and 2010, were replaced by the second satellite, launched in 2010. Like their predecessors, the second-generation satellites provide X-band synthetic aperture radar imagery, but they are also capable of collecting images of 2 regions that may be hundreds of kilometers apart from one another at the same time. The CSG-2 mission was originally scheduled to launch on a Vega C rocket. Given that first launch of the vehicle was not expected to occur until at least May, ASI made the decision last fall to switch to a Falcon 9 in order to launch the spacecraft by the end of the year, a move that was met with skepticism by some in the European space industry. Last fall, ASI issued a statement justifying its decision to acquire a launch from SpaceX, stating that because Arianespace's backlog on Soyuz and Ariane systems was already full in 2021, it was not possible to have a European backup solution compliant with the CSG-2 schedule. Continuing its long-standing support for the European launch industry, ASI demonstrated its confidence in Arianespace and Vega C capabilities by contracting the launch of CSG-3 satellites, which is scheduled to launch in 2024. Following the launch of 2 Starlink satellites on January 6th and 18th, as well as the Transporter 3 rideshare mission on January 13th, this is the 4th Falcon 9 mission of 2022. On February 1st of this year, another Falcon 9 mission launched Starlink satellites from the Kennedy Space Center, while a Falcon 9 mission to launch classified payload for the National Reconnaissance Office from the Vandenberg Space Force Base in California was also scheduled for Feb 2nd. While SpaceX executives have not provided a specific forecast for the number of launches scheduled for this year, Sandy Magnus, a member of NASA's Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, stated at a meeting of the committee on January 27th that the company was planning for 52 launches in 2022, or 1 launch per week in the near future. Wow, that's an incredible pace, she said, but she added a note of caution to the statement. NASA and SpaceX will have to make certain that the appropriate amount of attention and priority is given to missions and that the appropriate resources are brought to bear in order to keep the pace at a healthy level. Although SpaceX has had success in the past, the company has had difficulty maintaining a high launch frequency. As a result, only 3 Falcon 9 missions were completed in the following 4 months of the year 2021, largely due to the company's failure to complete development of Starlink satellites, which comprised the majority of the Falcon 9 manifest. But, given that the FAA is a body of the United States of America responsible for investigating licensing and permits for any machine that flies in US skies, a question that arises in our minds is, does the FAA also investigate accidents? Because the FAA should not only be at the feet of SpaceX, checking out every front and back step they take on the liftoff of the SpaceX Starship, but do they also investigate accidents that occur to aircrafts while in flight? Now, here's the answer. Actually, the National Transportation Safety Board, or the NTSB, conducts the investigation, with the FAA as a co-investigator. If the accident involves an airliner, the airline company, the airline builder, and the Airline Pilots Association will all be involved in the investigation. The Accident Investigation Committee functions as a committee with members assigned to the teams that investigate all aspects of the situation. Following that, the NTSB organizes conclusions based on the findings of the various teams. These investigations are subject to several restrictions, the most important of which is that the goal is not to assign blame, but to determine what accident, so that it can be avoided in the future. However, amidst the delay FAA has given SpaceX, the company still sneak through the backyard and continuously carrying out one launch and another. So even though the FAA seems to be a hindrance, SpaceX is a headway. That is, forward ever, backward never. Do you believe FAA can stop SpaceX? Be sure to check out your favorite SpaceX video here.